Chairman, you can start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of the Audit and Risk Management Committee. Welcome also to those members of the public and press accessing the meeting via the live stream to YouTube. I'm Councillor Kim French and I'm chairing today's meeting. Minutes will be produced in the usual way and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time as the minutes are produced. I would like to remind members and officers that only audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream. Therefore, when speaking, please ensure your microphones are on and switch them off when you are finished speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones are on silent or turned off. Finally, please be aware that the cameras will be on during the entire meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Member Services to report any apologies, please.
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Spalding and Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2. Previous minutes. Agenda item 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 17th of October 2022 as being a correct record. Do I have a proposer for these minutes? Councillor Purser, a seconder please. Councillor Mrs French. Does any member have any comments to make on these minutes, please? Okay, that's fine. Okay. Any other comments? No. Can I have a show of hands who approve these minutes, please? Thank you, members. The minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of October 2022 are agreed. Agenda item 3 is to report additional items for consideration which the chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. There are none today. Agenda item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please raise your hand. Councillor Booth?
Chairman, I don't think I need to actually declare it because the amount of time has passed since I was an employee of Yorkshire Building Society, but I know we've got some loans with them at the moment in time, but it was well over 3 years ago, so it falls outside the period for declaring it, but just to make members aware.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? No further declarations. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is the Treasury Management Strategy Report, and now call upon Mark Saunders, Chief Accountant, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll refer it briefly to the Treasury Management Report because if I keep repeating that title, we could be here all night. It's one of the lengthiest titles of any report we write. The Treasury Management Report, I think all members are now familiar with the process, the reporting process of the Treasury Management function through the year. It all starts with this report really, which determines the strategy for the coming year. And what that does is provide the framework within which the council will operate its Treasury Management function for the coming year. In particular, it talks about the investment strategy and the borrowing strategy. So obviously the investment strategy deals with all the aspects of what we do with our surplus cash, where we're going to invest it, how long we can do it for, what type of institutions we're going to invest with, and so on and so forth. So the strategy then determines how we deal with that, and then when we have any surplus cash available, we have to invest within those within the limits contained within the report. Similarly, with the borrowing strategy, obviously the borrowing strategy deals with any external borrowing we may want to take out in the coming year, and that's in support of our approved capital programme, whatever that will turn out to be, and Cabinet and Council will consider that next month. The draft figures are in the report, and again that determines who we borrow the money from and how long we would do it for, and what minimum revenue provision then we would actually make towards that borrowing requirement. So all those things are in the report. These are all backed up by a variety of indicators. As you go through the report, you'll see them dotted about the dotted about the report for various investments and borrowing indicators, and that's really to ensure that what we're doing is maintains the council in a prudent, affordable, and sustainable position. So not to overcommit ourselves in any of those things, and all the financing costs associated with the borrowing are contained within the medium-term financial strategy. I don't want to go too much else to say, really, Chairman. The report is there. It goes into a lot of details about the various aspects of it. It is very, very similar to previous reports that we've had in previous strategies. There's been one or two minor changes to the code of practice by SIPA. That's more about some reporting requirements to do with commercial investment activities, just to make sure that when we do any commercial activity, then all members are aware of what's going on and the implications of that before they take the decision to do those type of investments. So, in that respect, Chairman, I will stop rabbiting there, and if any members have any queries, then obviously we'll do our best to answer.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a proposer for this report, please? Councillor Mrs. French, seconder, please. Councillor Purser. I now open this item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments or questions. Councillor Booth.
Chair, yeah, just wanted to cover a point about investment. So I'm assuming that this covers the investment we're providing to Fenton Futures, because it becomes debt that effectively.
Yes, it will do.
Yeah, okay.
More details about that will be in the capital strategy that accompanies the budget report as well. But yeah,
Right.
but it does do that. Yeah.
But obviously it has an impact on this council because we're effectively making a loan facility available to that organisation, which is effectively a subsidiary of the council. So with the movements, it looks like the amount of capital debt, I think it's up to about 35 million. Now we agreed a facility of up to 25 million. So are we saying we've got 10 million of other debts ourselves as a council effectively? Yeah. Okay. But we're not exceeding that 25 million pounds ceiling. No. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I guess the concern or issue I have is obviously that is a facility we're making to that organisation. We don't have oversight of where that money is actually going because it goes into confidential session. So effectively, we've been asked to approve a strategy where there's 25 million pounds of debt that we don't know is actually where it's actually being invested. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Well, the council gets all the information. That obviously the investment board and then the cabinet and council will get the appropriate reports at the appropriate times to what those investments are and the developments. But obviously, that's at the moment all that's happening at the moment is the planning process going through for a couple of developments. So we haven't really got into the nitty gritty of the costings and the viabilities of those developments yet.
But I think it's fair to say with the way the governance arrangements have been established, when those decisions are taken, they're taken in confidential, as confidential items. As a committee, we're not entitled to see what happens at that unless we get leave, I guess, the chairman. But that's pretty rare, I think, for that to happen. So in theory, we're being asked to judge that the governance arrangements are appropriate for that loan facility to be put in place.
All we're doing is actually approving, and cabinet and council will obviously approve it eventually because that's the council has to approve the strategy. All they're doing is approving a facility under which that borrowing can be undertaken. The actual loans that happened will obviously go into further details via the investment board and cabinet in due course. But
again, that goes into confidential session and we don't have any sight of those decisions made at those meetings.
I think you get to the reporting also comes back to here in terms of the update reports, because we get a review, so you actually see any loans that go to that company. You actually see those in the monitoring reports that we do.
So those will be available for public consumption.
Well, when we do the update of this, when we do the mid-year review and then your other reports during the year relating to this, and we'll do any further ones, then obviously it'll be fairly obvious on here what's taken place in terms of the borrowings to that company, or the facilities to that company. Because at the moment, what it says in the strategy is that the commercial investment strategy has this 25 million, of which 4 have been spent already, available to fund those sort of developments. It doesn't say that 21 million is being used to fund FFL. It's for the overall commercial investment strategy. So that's what that facility, which we're approving here and council will eventually approve. Obviously, when those things happen, then they get reported either by the investment board, who deal with the commercial investment strategy, and then onto cabinet, but also through these treasury management reviews as we go through the year.
It's just, I know that they go into confidential session and they're considering all the options, and as of yet, I don't think we've particularly had any enlightening updates, to put it that way. I know there was because it's still at early stages. Let's put it that way. So we're not getting, I would say, a detailed breakdown of where the loan facilities are going.
I'll let Councillor French come in. I think she wants to comment on that for you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Booth, I believe that you're entitled as an elected member to ask for this information, unless it's really commercially sensitive. There's no reason why it should be refused.
There's still the potential it could be refused.
It depends on what it is, but as an elected member, you are entitled to information that members of the public are not.
But I guess what the point I'm making is the governance arrangements and the oversight and how that's going to work, particularly with investments. I mean, we're talking more 2023, 24 and that years onwards, but it's like that's part of what we're approving in principle here, and it's how we as a committee can undertake our role as a critical friend to make sure that we're satisfied the governance arrangements are appropriate and the risks being taken are appropriate. There's a Thurrock Council in the news for all the wrong reasons at the moment, because is it billions of pounds in debt, and to ask for the government to bail them out to the tune of 300 odd million pounds, I think I read in the news the other day. Yeah, so you know, obviously we're not talking quite that scale, but we want to make sure that we've got the appropriate arrangements in place, and particularly the oversight that this committee is going to have on that whole process.
That's right. Just any particularly around FFL anyway in the future, the accounting reporting for that at the moment is very limited because there's been very little activity going through. But certainly in future years, obviously it's a limited company, so we have to file accounts with Companies House. And on there will be all the details of any loans it receives from the council for any of the developments.
The problem with that process is it's whereas after the event, probably up to 12 months after the event, so it's not a forward-looking process.
Yeah, it's that's determined by the investment board, and the business plan that gets approved for FFL gives it the overview of what we're expecting to provide to the company in the way of loans during the year. The actuality of that is somewhat different in terms of what happens on the ground as the developments materialise. But obviously there is an agreed loan agreement process between the council and FFL, which have been agreed both by the investment board on behalf of the council and the FFL board. So before any loans are given out, then obviously that all those things have to be in place to be able to draw down that facility anyway. Like I say, the overall facility can be more than just the FFL stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it can be direct investments by this council, in which case we'd have more direct oversight of it. But obviously, when it goes to FFL, that's when you've got effectively barriers in place and you don't quite see what's happening, which is my concern.
Take on board.
Any other questions or comments, members? No. No further speakers, therefore the recommendation of the Audit and Risk Management Committee to endorse the strategy detailed in this report to be included in the final budget report for 2023-2024.
Can I just add as a note that, you know, we do get oversight of how that investment strategy is taken forward, and that is brought back to this committee.
Yep.
That recommendation. Yeah.
Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendations, otherwise I will take it that you agree. There are no raised hands, therefore the recommendations are approved. Agenda item 6 is the Corporate Risk Register review. I now call upon Sam Anthony, Head of HR, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that we provide a quarterly update to the Council's risk register. So this is included on page 35 of your pack. And as usual, any areas that have been updated are highlighted in green. So I will just take you to those areas. So the first one is page 42, which is risk number 3, failure of contractors and suppliers. And the update is the Cabinet decision, or make reference to the Cabinet decision of November 2022, that Fenland District Council and Freedom Leisure will continue to look at the future financial situation and mitigate any considerations. So that's the update to the particular area. The second update is on page 45. And this is risk reference 5, so insufficient staff. And the update is the trial is making reference to South Cams. Many of you will know that South Cams are moving towards a pilot of 4 days a week, and the plan is for them to roll that out to blue collar workers. So we're obviously keeping an eye on that to see if it has an impact on our own workforce. So hence that's been added to the risk register. The next update is on page 46, risk reference 6, so breach of ICT. And the update is the CPLRF, the Local Resilience Forum, recently produced a cyber incident resilience plan. So that's part of our ongoing actions, and that we have contributed towards that plan and multi-agency exercise, which took place in November. And the final update is on page 60, I believe. Risk 15, overrun of major councils, and just the addition of governance arrangements around project management, which has been reviewed and presented to Cabinet. So that concludes the updates to the risk register, Chair. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Can I propose it for this report, please? Councillor Booth, sorry. Can I have a seconder for the report, please? Councillor Purser. Thank you. And now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments. Councillor Booth.
Didn't even wait for me to raise my hand. I think, Sam, you weren't at last meeting from memory when we discussed this, and I raised the point about how we can see the difference in the risk ratings and if it's like an increase or decrease. I think from what you're saying, there's been no real movement this time round, but I just wondered if you'd had any more thoughts about how that could be presented, just so we know if the situation's improving or you know, getting worse for certain reasons.
Thank you, Councillor. In answer to that, no, the risk ratings have remained the same. They are reviewed quarterly by the project team, CMT and management team. And was very upset to have the risk register moved on to Stephen Beecher, so he's now in charge of that. So it might be one to direct to him in the future, if that's okay.
Well, as there's been no movement this quarter, then you know, but it's how, you know, we can track it going forward. One other observation is just the more presentational. I just wonder if we ought to have the guidance that's at the beginning more as an appendix after the actual register. I know in commercial organisations that's what we tend to do, because you want to read what the risk register's got as opposed to 10 pages around what the policy and process is. So can I suggest that maybe we have that as an appendix in the future, just so we can concentrate on the issues, as it were.
Absolutely, councillor. I'll make sure that's passed on.
And then on that last point, on page 60. So we talked about governance arrangements around project management. So what's the essence of those changes? Because are we, for example, using Prince 2 management methodology, which is a whole industry in itself, having studied for that in the past, or what have we done to improve the situation around project management?
We've actually undertaken a review of the current project management arrangements. We don't use Prince 2, as you're quite right, it is quite complex. We use our own system of PIDs, and that's been rolled out across the organisation for a consistent approach with all project management and a project management board to feedback progress. So there's greater scrutiny amongst CMT and the management team for progress and updates for projects.
So is it fair to say that project management board effectively is a project management office for ensuring consistency across the projects within the organisation?
Yes, that's correct. And it's essentially the corporate management team that provide that scrutiny.
Any other comments, members?
Thank you.
Councillor Purser. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I think in the circumstances of their reports and the likes, both Sam and Mark, I think they deserve our gratitude and our grateful thanks to both them and all their teams and everything for all the hard work they've actually done in compiling these reports. And I'd like to be noted and express, if it could be, please.
Councillor. Any other comments? There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is the Audit and Risk Management Committee to agree the latest corporate risk register. Please, can you raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation? Otherwise, I will take it that you agree. Thank you, members. There are no raised hands, therefore the recommendation is approved. Agenda item 7 is the internal audit plan 2022-2023 progress report for Q2 and Q3. I now call upon Sam, Head of HR, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mark really wants to do this.
Oh, sorry.
It's me, is it? Okay. Thank you, Chair.
You don't need to fight over it, but one of you can do it. All right, Mark, you do it then. Sorry, Sam.
It's quite welcome to do it if you like. You can see we're all actually can't wait to get our hands on the report. As you can see, we're not only not the first choice, we're not even the second choice. We are the third team drafted in to talk about the report. So this is just the progress report, an update on the progress report that we get regularly during the year to update on the internal audit plan and how it's progressing during the year. Appendix 8 gives details of all the audits that have been completed during the year and a summary of what's been found during those audits. And Appendix B is the progress on all the recommendations that have been from various audits in the past year or so, and how they're progressing. I won't profess to be an expert on any of those audits that have taken place. So if you've got any detailed questions of that, we do obviously do our best to answer. But if we can't, which is more than likely, we will take that away and bring it back to the next meeting. Because the next meeting is quite an important meeting as far as the internal audit function is concerned. Because obviously you're aware that we're running at reduced capacity in the internal audit function after Kathy left the authority for Christmas. We've been carrying out since then the 5-yearly internal audit review of that function, which we're required to do. That's been going on over the past month or so. But in addition, what we've been also doing is looking at various options around how we resource the internal audit function going forward, and what that might look like, and how we actually can carry out our internal audit function in the most effective and efficient way going forward. And we hope to bring forward some of those options to the next committee, because obviously with the two members of staff that are currently there are doing their best to keep up to date with the audits which need to be done during this year for assurance purposes. But obviously they've had to prioritise the audits that they are doing, and not everything in the audit plan is going to get done this year, but we will aim to complete all the major audits that need to be done in order to give the appropriate assurance on the internal audit function that will need to be done as part of the final accounts process. But I shall leave it there, Chairman. If anybody wishes to ask any questions, we'll do our best to avoid them.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Mrs. French and a seconder. Councillor Booth, thank you. I now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. The question I was going to ask, which Mark obviously has half answered it. Obviously it was sad that we lost Kathy. You do have two members of the staff. Will two members of the staff be sufficient, or will you be looking later on to have additional staff?
Chair, if I can answer that. I think it probably won't be sufficient, councillor, and we are looking at a resourcing plan. We're looking at currently options for how the audit is managed and resourced going forward. The report makes reference to some kind of recruitment issues, which are not just in this particular area of professionalism, but across the sector and many other areas. So we are quite aware, and we're working with other local authorities to see where we can have some resourcing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, I mean, similar to that, I was going to ask, have we considered like agency staff to help us fill any gaps, particularly as we're going to, well, yeah, regardless of what we say we're going to come up with in the future, there will be a number of audits that will be outstanding, and we'll have to play catch up, won't we, basically?
Yeah, in answer to that, thank you, Chair. We are looking at agency options. Agency options are very expensive. So we are currently looking, as I said, with other local authorities. There are several organisations like LGSS, for example, that provide audit by a shared arrangement. So we're looking at opportunities to procure that as an interim measure whilst we look at resourcing it ourselves.
Councillor Wicks.
My question relates to the rescheduling of internal audits for this fourth quarter. Is that an option you're looking at? And if so, what catch-up arrangements are you going to put in place?
Yeah, we will definitely be reprioritising the audits that need to be done by the end of the year, because there are certain ones which need to be completed on a regular basis, on an annual basis, in order to provide the assurance that's required by the internal audit team to the council, in terms of the process we go through for the statement of accounts to provide that governance assurance. Well, the arrangements for catching up with that will be determined when we have the appropriate resources in place, and we have to reassess what audits actually need to be done, because there's and how best we make use of the time available, because there was a thought from certainly from the consultants that's working on the report that we actually spend too many days doing audits, and we will have to reassess what audits need to be done and whether some of the lower risk audits can be done in a longer time period, and just reassess that and to make sure that we obviously don't not do the audits that we actually must do and that we need to do, and then we can come up with a different program of works in planning when we get the appropriate resources in place.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, sort of on a similar point. I mean, under 2.4, it lists all the other activities we do as an audit team. And I think I've often said, you know, should we actually be doing that as part of the audit, because it's poacher turn gamekeeper and the likes, you know, you're crossing the boundary. Are we scaling back on doing some of that activity to assist with the audits? And I assume that will be featuring into the review that's due by the end of March.
I mean, yes, certainly, councillor, we are, I suppose, looking at those and ranking what we can and can't do. Some of those that are listed are things that we have to do, like the National Fraud Initiative. There's a mandatory requirement there, but some of those we can scale back for sure. So that's the process we're going through.
Any other comments, questions, members? Okay, there are no further speakers. Councillor Booth, sorry.
There was one other question, it slipped my mind, but yes, it was around one of the reviews, the 3 Cs review. So we have marked it as, was it adequate, I believe? There were a number of recommendations, I think 5 medium recommendations from memory. Yeah, trying to, my PC is playing around at the moment. Yeah, so and my concern is, how can we say that's adequate given the nature of some of those issues that have been raised around the governance and the MI? Because that sort of goes to the core of how you deal with complaints and you manage those going forward. And it just seems the rating might be a bit low on that particular review. Now, obviously, I don't expect you to have all the answers today, given you're covering for someone that's covering, but I think it's certainly a question that we need to look at in relation to that particular review.
There was no high recommendations there, mostly medium or low ones. So it depends on the extent of that. In like I said, we can find out what that.
I guess the overall point I'm making is it's the governance around it, and there's a number of issues there that speak to the governance arrangements not working effectively, and therefore should they have been just medium recommendations.
Looks like it's around monitoring reporting, doesn't it? So. Yeah.
And I think it refers to the table at the bottom of page 72. I think I recall having this conversation previously, or hearing this discussed. It's, you know, whether there's moderate risks, high risks, and it's where the categorisation stops, but we can certainly feed it back. You have a comment?
There are no further speakers. Therefore, the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to note the activity and performance of the internal audit function. Please raise your hand if you disagree with the report recommendation. Otherwise, I will take it that you agree. There are no raised hands. Therefore, the recommendation is approved. Agenda item 8 is the Audit and Risk Management Committee work plan, as is in your report pack. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you. The work plan is noted for information. Agenda item 9 is items of topical interest. I believe there are none. Agenda item 10 is items which the chairman has under item 3 deemed urgent. There are also none. This marks the end of the meeting. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, members.